Was a David Bowie concert more important to the fall of the Berlin Wall than Ronald Reagan's Tear Down This Wall speech? Yes. Bowie's concert helped to explode an undercurrent of discontent within the East German society. Reagan's speech, which was less than a week later, was overshadowed, and it was only assigned importance after the Cold War had ended. Let's go over the course of events. On the weekend of 6 June 1987, a concert series was held in West Berlin on the grounds of the former Reichstag. The reason for the location was obvious. Those in East Berlin would be able to hear it. On the second night, Bowie's performance helped provoke the growing crowd on the East German side. The atmosphere shifted, and by the third night it had developed into a police riot. Protesters sang La Internationale as Genesis played. Why this is so important to the Reagan speech is that Reagan's speech happened less than 1 week later in roughly the same location. As such, and because a riot had just occurred, East Germans were heavily restricted on who could be in that area while Reagan was speaking. Compare this photo taken on the eastern side during the Whitsun weekend with this photo taken by the Stasi looking east from the Brandenburger gate as Reagan spoke. Thus, to the people in East Berlin, the speech didn't make an impact. Plus, generally, it was just viewed as one of many speeches that those in the West, and especially Reagan, had made over the course of the Cold War. And this was something that the CIA had continually been trying to communicate. Statements are great, but they never expected the West to back them up. What was memorable to East Germans was a brutal crackdown by the state. For the vast majority of East Germans, these state crackdowns weren't a part of their everyday lives. They had existed in generations of relative stability. This wasn't the generation that had lived through the '53 uprising. They were born into a state that already existed, one that was relatively stable. And that's what changes with this crackdown. It became a recentering of who the people were and who the real revolutionaries were. The status quo starts to change, and it starts to reject the Socialist Unity Party as being the representatives of the people. And that is one of the key elements to the collapse of East Germany. The Socialist Unity Party had lost the trust of its people, and the status quo were no longer willing to defend it. None of this is saying that Reagan's speech is unimportant. It's just not as important as sometimes implied. The Soviet Union took notice of it in so much as they dismissed it as hypocritical. It was on the front page of the New York Times, but outside of the United States, it was generally ignored. It wasn't until after the Cold War that popular culture really took notice of the timing and started to insert it into the cultural memory. This controversial opinion being that of one of America's top diplomats in Berlin at the time. But that cultural memory is very American-centric and based on the Western victory lap of the 1990s. The one that assumed the fall of the Berlin Wall had to have been based just on Western actions, and removed any agency from East Germans themselves. As scholarship moves on, we are starting to see that our understanding of why East Germany collapsed should focus more on the people. And that's why a riot during Bowie is important, as it was the actions of the people that brought down East Germany.